Everybody, and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Truth Podcast. My guest this week. Why do I always say this week? You guys know it's every day now. It was once a week a long time ago. But my guest this week is Hope Carroll. Hope was a licensed therapist for a long time before becoming a soul relationship coach. She left an unhealthy marriage of 23 years and discovered how to find life after a breakup. Welcome to the show, Hope.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Love your name. I love the name Hope. That's really, really cool. That is neat. I like that.
I try to live up to it.
That's good. That's good. I think we all need that. Okay, and now the glasses come off as usual, and I am now blind, as everybody knows. Okay, my first question in just about every show is, what lit the fire for you to become an entrepreneur? I kind of think I know the answer to this, but maybe not. I'm just going to let you talk.
Okay. Mine's been kind of a roundabout road. As you mentioned before, I was a licensed therapist for a long time. I was actually an art therapist, and so art was also my passion, as well as helping people. And I really became disenchanted with the mental health system and how it worked. And I really saw how limited it could be in helping people. And the fact that in just about every single agency that I worked in, or structure that I came in as a therapist, I had to give whoever client I was working for a mental illness diagnosis, even if it was for billing purposes. And I really didn't like that. I did not like the assumption that the person I was working with was already sick. Yeah, even if the description was descriptive of the problem, I did not like anyone identifying with being mentally ill. It just didn't resonate with me. And so I left the mental health field. And I left my marriage. It was not a healthy marriage. I got married young. I did not have a lot of self-esteem when I started. And it finally came to a point where I had to recognize where I wanted to be in life and what was best, not just for me, but for the growth of everyone involved. I have 2 children as well. And like I said, I also loved art. I was an artist and left art for a long time while I was married. So I actually went back to my art and became a rock painting artist for a while, and loved it. I loved that form of self-expression and healing. And then it kind of just clicked because I learned about coaching, and it's like, well, wait a minute. I can still help people and do whatever they need to do for them in this modality, without having to label myself as a therapist. So that's how I got into coaching, because I really did enjoy helping people and wanted to get back into that again. And I wanted to share my experience of knowing what true unconditional love is, and that you don't need to have someone else in your life to know that in yourself.
Wow, that's really cool. And I like the fact that you didn't want to label people. And I think you're in an area now where you can help people, but you don't have to label them, which I think is important. Because when we put those labels on people, it does something to them. I think it does set up a belief system inside of them that, oh, this is who I am now. Even though you just had to do it for billing purposes or insurance or whatever, all of a sudden now they're diagnosed. So this is what they have and this is what they are. That's dangerous. I actually think that's not healthy, but that's just my opinion.
No, I agree. I've had personal experience with that. I was formally diagnosed with adult attention deficit disorder, and I took medication for it for a while. And after I left my marriage, it's like everything shifted. I kind of opened up to myself and recognized I don't have to be this. I don't have to live under this paradigm anymore. And so I stopped. I stopped taking the medication. I learned how to manage my time, found other coping skills that really worked for me, and recognized that the particular abilities that I have don't need to be labeled as a weakness.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean that just because, per se, that you're bad at math, it doesn't mean that, oh, you have to play to your weakness, you have to get good at this. No, you can use your strengths to live your life and still be of service to the rest of the world.
Oh, we had a meeting with Carrie Verrocchio. She's a coach, and she was talking about the same thing about emphasizing your strengths. We always try to go back to our weaknesses, but she said kind of farm out your weaknesses, or have a coach or VA or somebody else do the things that you're really not good at, or things that limit you, and just focus on your strengths and grow that strength and do the things that you were meant to do. It was very powerful, actually, that when we talked about that. I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I want to ask you, in this entrepreneurial journey at this point so far, have you found that there's anything either internally or externally that has held you back or limited you from where you think you want to be, or on the way to where you're at?
I think it's mainly been my own mindset. In a lot of times, I think that there is this interaction that we all have between our feelings, beliefs, and our actions, um, which influences our energy. And if we shift any two of them, whether it be, say, our thoughts and our actions, that's gonna change how we feel about things. That's gonna change our energy. If we change how we think and how we feel, that's gonna change what we do. Um, and I let my conditioning of who I was hold me back for a long time, um, to the point where I saw myself, Bill, in this container, in this room, not even realizing, oh, there's a whole house here. There's a whole world outside this house here now. And it's a matter of when you allow yourself to open even just to the possibility of other things being available, then it widens the channels for which you can operate from.
Mm. That is really, really cool. That is really interesting. Wow. See, I have to think about that a minute. When I have to do that, I know it's really good. So, I mean, you are a soul relationship coach. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, yes,
Can you
yes,
explain a little more about what that is?
yes. Um, I believe that with any relationship, romantic or not, the foundation and basis of that relationship starts with the relationship that you have with your own soul self. And that's why, you know, people will say, oh, that the eyes are mirrors to the soul, that a relationship will reflect back to you everything that you are, all the issues you have to deal with, because it's true. And it's a matter of getting in touch with that, getting an understanding of what the actions the other person is actually conveying, so you can understand where they're coming from and also understand where you are.
So it's basically a mirror for you, is what you're
Largely,
saying.
largely. But of course, it's an interaction because we're all our own individual divine selves.
Mm. Sometimes I feel less than divine. I'm just being honest. So,
Oh, sure, of course. I mean, we have to navigate. It's like we have this duality where we know intellectually that we are a part of all that is, of this entire universe, but at the same time, we're having to manage all of the reality that we are facing here in this physical world.
So you counseled a lot of people and relationships and that type of thing. What do you find is most prevalent as a problem between two people?
A lot of insecurity, I think, and a lot of underlying fears. Um, and those fears will act out, and they can become very easily misinterpreted. You know, I find women who say their partners abandoned them, or left, or broken up in any, however form, and they take that as a sign of that somehow they're not enough, that
Mm.
something's wrong with them, that they're not lovable. And I try to help them to see the bigger picture, how it's an interaction, and that one person's behavior does not necessarily have any bearing on who you are and what you're doing at the time. That may just be where they're at, and where they're at isn't able to um, mesh well with where you are.
So different levels.
Yeah.
So like in the law of attraction, it kind of talks about higher vibration and lower vibration. If you have a high vibrating person and they match with the lower vibrating person, that just causes some chaos, right?
It can. It can. It depends on how you navigate the situation.
Mm.
If the person who has a broader perspective can maybe understand, you know, why their partner's being distant, or being remote, or being secretive, as that's an expression of their own underlying fears and insecurity, for
Mm.
example, then it could possibly become navigated through.
Mm. So what is your theory on this is hard to explain, I think. The question is what is your take on compatibility? Is that something that we necessarily have to, I'm talking about romantic relationships in this point, in this part of the question. Um, is that something that we could work on, develop, or is that something that just either happens or doesn't happen?
Well, I think there's two pieces of that. One is the relationships that we're born into. Those are kind of set for life.
Mm-hmm.
The parents that we have, the people that raise us, that is something of the container that we understand our relationships through. Then there's also the container of free will and choice. Who we choose to interact with, and what opportunities we attract to ourselves to find other people that are like-minded or not for us to interact with.
That's interesting too. So when you're counseling people, you're teaching them to look self first, right? Correct?
Yes. The more you know yourself and understand who you are and what your needs are, because everyone's different, the more then you can language it for other people who you may want to have relationships with to understand.
Mm. So if you know yourself, you can explain it to other people.
Exactly.
And then they can understand you better. And that way they understand that what's going on in your mind, so it puts their mind at ease a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, if you're the kind of person that needs time out, quiet time for yourself, but and your partner doesn't, but you never say anything about that. They have no idea.
In a lot of cases, and I find this in relationships I have been in before, it almost seems like one of the other partners thinks you're a mind reader. I hate to say that, but just simply put, that's what I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, well, you should know me by now, or you should know this about me, and you should know that. I'm like, so you don't have to say anything because I'm just supposed to guess? Or have you seen that in that paradigm kind of show up with the people that you coach?
I I haven't had anyone explicitly tell me, but that makes a lot of sense that some people would do that because they are assuming that you are picking up all the nonverbal cues and the context of which the conversations are coming from through their eyes. Um, and they, because that's how they're seeing things, they don't understand your perspective. They don't understand that you don't know them the way they know them, because we all know our own selves best because we live with ourselves 24/7.
Right, right. How is someone supposed to get into your mind? And I think it goes to communication and communication skills, especially when you were growing up, something like that, or you see your mom and dad, or you see different things when you're growing up, and it kind of translates to your friendships and relationships and all that later as to how you see people communicate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the template in which you communicate from, because that's the world that you grew up in, that's the world you knew. If you lived in a family that did not communicate clearly and really only communicated below the surface through innuendo or through unspoken language, then you're not necessarily going to get what a person says, that they're meeting that at face value, because you
Mm.
might already always be looking, okay, so where's the angle here? Because that's what you've been conditioned to understand.
So when you coach an individual, do you coach couples too? I'm just throwing that out there. Do you coach
Uh,
couples
no, I coach people individually.
individually? So what is the outcome? What is the goal for that person and you? And maybe that's in an individual basis, but your overall goal for someone that comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm having this problem. I don't seem to be doing well at relationships. I'm kind of messed up." Something like that. Yeah, what is the outcome that you want them to have, and how do you kind of get there?
I want them to have a really secure sense of self sufficiency, because a lot of times people will come to me and feel like they need another person, or that they're not enough, or they're not loved, they're not wanted, they feel broken in some way, when that's an illusion. We all came to this world, you know, now that we're adults, before we even began any relationship, as a whole and complete person in and of ourselves. And I want them to understand that, and that foundation is what is going to take them, if they choose, to the aligned relationship that they want to have in its own time, without having to look for one. Because when you embody the qualities that you want to see in the people around you and are truly okay with yourself, whether you're in a relationship or not, that's what fosters the conditions to bring those relationships in.
Mm. So what do you tell someone that they're coming to you and they're coming to you because they want a relationship, but they're lonely? I mean, how do you deal with loneliness?
I help them to understand that, one, they're never alone. that there's more to this world than just your physical person, and that if they are feeling lonely, well, heck, we have two arms, two legs. Usually, most people are fully functional to see, hear, speak, smell, talk. You can go out and be around people. Go look what brings you joy. What things do you like to do? Foster the conditions to be around the people that are like minded to you. You don't have to just sit around in your house and be miserable. That
Mm.
just brings in more loneliness.
So you said you had a bad marriage, bad relationship. Does that does that make you see things through a different lens, or have you um, went through a lot of that stuff and become better?
It's helped me to have a deeper understanding of what can make relationships go wrong. Um,
Mm.
Neither from any fault of either party. You know, I hear a lot of people talking about a person being a narcissist, another person being an empath, and so there's like good versus evil, and it's like that's not what relationships are about. The minute that you put a label on someone, you are putting them in a container, which is going to exclude all the nuances of what got that person to where they are.
Mm. I noticed that label a lot lately. Is this narcissist thing? I hadn't heard of that. Because I'm older. I turned 50 in September, so it's like it's kind of a newer thing for me, at least. Can you explain what that is?
Um, it is extrapolated, I believe, from the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. Um, there is a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder,
Hmm.
which basically describes someone as being self-centered, and very much um, not empathetic, not understanding, coming from a very self centered viewpoint. I don't know all the details because I don't pay attention to that stuff. I try to look at who this person is
Hmm.
versus the descriptions of what a person may be described as, because every context is different.
Mm-hmm. I just see it labeled a lot nowadays.
Yeah.
So I was wondering a little bit about that. And I particularly see it labeled in men more than women. I believe I see a lot of women, oh, that person's a narcissist. This person's a narcissist. I'm like, okay. So it was nice to get a little better understanding of what that actually is so that, when people tell me, I kind of understand.
Right, right, right.
So I understand completely taking everybody for their individual selves. And I really believe in that. I don't believe in labeling and I don't like it very much. So that's when I'm hearing this, I'm a little discouraged because a lot of people go like ADHD and all that. Not that I'm saying it's not real. I'm just saying it's used a lot as a label.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I believe because it is used widely, a lot of people lose the context of where it originates from.
Yes. Yeah. I totally agree with that. Yeah. You just label everybody with all kinds of things and then, you know, then this person's just this. But there's so much more to a person than just that.
Yep, yep.
And so that's why I kind of like your approach more than I do, you know, a lot of people out there that just say, oh, well, it's, this person just, I can't, I'll say narcissist again because I'm not really coming up with the other terminology, but but it just seems like we just slap labels on people and then stay away from this person because they're this, and it's like, um, yeah, that might be a part of them, but are those people? Can those people change? You know?
Yeah, and I believe that we all have the power to, uh, when two things happen. One, we have to be aware to ourselves that this is a problem, because if we don't see it as a problem, then there's no motivation to change. And the second thing is we have to decide. We just have to decide, okay, I don't like this. I'm going to choose something else.
Mm. So in that situation, I think it is a choice. I don't think it's an easy choice, though. I think that
I
there's
know.
things that are very difficult for us to overcome and become that better person. Because I think there's always a duality in us of good and bad. I really do. I think there's a good
Mhm.
side of us and a bad side of us. I think that's in everyone.
Yeah. And I never said that it was easy.
Oh, I know that. I wasn't trying to say anything that you said
Yeah.
was
No, no,
wrong.
no. I get what you're
It
saying.
just felt like, a lot of people think that, oh yeah, I'll just do this and choose not to, but that's so much harder than what it sounds.
No, it's the beginning. It's the
It's the
beginning because
first
then,
step.
yeah, because when you decide, then it's like, okay, this is my path. And then you look at, okay, where are the hows to get there?
So when you're working with people, how do you work through all this emotional stuff? I mean, all of the baggage, the hurts, the fears, if you have a lot of people cheat on you, you think everybody's going to do it, and you just see it everywhere, and you know what I mean. You don't trust people anymore. How do you get past those things when you're working with someone?
Well, the very first thing I believe is that you have to acknowledge where you're at, because if you don't, then you're not going to be able to place yourself on the map to where you want to go to if you don't have a starting point. So that's the first thing. I don't believe that it's healthy to tell someone, "Oh, you'll just get over it," or try and cheer them up. No, I think it's important to honor your feelings and the crap that you're going through, because it's real.
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling it and it's real. And good or bad, it is what it is, and that's what you're starting with. And then acknowledge, okay, I'm here, but that doesn't mean I have to stay here.
It's just tough. I've noticed that though with a lot of people, it's tough for them to get over the emotional scarring that happens in a breakup or things that like a long-term relationship and things like that when that
Absolutely.
goes bad. So you have that person in front of you and they're almost feel broken inside.
Mhm.
How do you coach them to that next level to get them? I know it's a step by step, but where's that? How do you help them to overcome that?
Well, first thing, I definitely acknowledge when someone's feeling that broken, the steps that they're taking in that moment to choose to get help, to get to a different place, because that in itself is an acknowledgement of, I'm worthy of something more. I know there's something more out there for me. I may not know how to get there, but I know that there's help that I can access. So that investing literally as well as symbolically in yourself to get you where you want to go is a powerful statement that a lot of people don't think about. But it's a part of understanding the symbolic translation of the things that we do in our lives.
Mm. Explain that a little more. Symbolic translation. What is that?
Okay. Well, for example, money can be a big trigger for
Yeah.
people. A big trigger. Why? Because it holds a lot of energy in our lives, and we let it have power in our lives. Um, if we were to say, oh, for example, no, you don't have very many bananas in your life. Nothing. It's like no trigger. Doesn't do anything. It's because bananas. What? So what? Who cares? But if I say, oh, you don't have a lot of money, it's like, zing.
Mm.
That hits you. Why? Because of the power we let money have in our life. And so I translate that energy. If you look at it as energy that flows, comes in and out of our lives, just like any electrical current. That's why I believe that money is also called currency.
Mm. I've never heard of that before. That's really cool. Currents. Like a current.
Mhm.
Huh. That's pretty cool. And so I'm trying to think of so relationships. Okay, I'm gonna go to a different scenario. So maybe verbal or physical abuse in the family. And that's a thing that happens more than we really would like to admit. But how do you get that person to a place where they're whole again after that type of a thing happens to them so that they can go on and not recreate that scene in their relationships going forward?
Well, I know I experienced verbal abuse in my marriage. So I understand that very well. Um, and a lot of times the abused person does not really comprehend their position in the dynamic and their sovereignty of who they are. Because when you look at it where the person who is doing the abuse, who's inflicting the pain, if you see them like a lot of bullies, for example, they have a lot of fear. And that's why they feel the need to be abusive as a show of power, because inside they really feel powerless,
Mm.
because they really are. When you look at it that way through those eyes, because you don't have to do a thing and you're getting them to react like this to you. And if they are reacting like this to you and you're not even doing anything, look at how much power you truly have in their lives.
Mm. Wow. Boy, that's deep. That's really, really deep.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's very good. Um, we are just, us as human beings are interconnected. That's my belief.
Mhm.
And sometimes, and I know this is the case in my life at this point, is when you reach a different level or you keep continuing to want to go up, the people that aren't on that level tend to either want to pull you down or be jealous or critical or stuff like that when you're trying to do something different. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing the show or
Sure,
you're doing
sure.
what you're doing. Um, is that because of, I would say it may be a jealousy or a fear of where they're at. They're so afraid of stepping out, and you're doing that. So it's like, it creates a an anger or something inside of them. I mean, I'm just talking about people that are treat people badly because they're trying to succeed.
Well, it depends on the context. I mean, you may have, friends and relatives who see what you're doing and they don't want you doing it. Why? Because they perceive that as something scary, something not safe, something that's going to leave you broke, something that's not going to be beneficial to you. And they don't see your vision. And so they are
Mm,
trying to help you out of their own paradigm of keeping you safe.
mm,
Of course, there are other people out there that may be jealous, and because they don't see their own sovereignty and that they have the power to use their own gifts and abilities to do whatever they want, you know, to use them just like you are. The only difference is you are choosing not to act out in fear. You are choosing to do what you feel led to do. And that's a scary position for a lot of people.
yeah, it is. It is. So especially people that watch you, especially people that are observing. You know what I mean? They're like, but I like this idea. I mean, I'd love to be on my own or be my own boss or all those type of things. But I'll just watch this guy and see how he does.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or I'll watch Hope and see how she's doing and see how that works out. And if it works out, well, maybe I'll try that. We have a lot of folks watching us. We really do, or more than we think we do. And and so there is a lot of pressure on the individual to succeed because of the family, because of the other situations, because of the people that are even trying to bring them down. In our heart, we want to bring them up. So that's a dynamic as well, between the relationship between us and family members and friends and stuff like that. I'm finding I make a lot of new friends, and it's been an incredible journey. Making those new friends and those new relationships are amazing. I think you just as you get into higher levels, you just attract different people, and so do you see that too, or is it hard for people to, like, I think I said this almost before, but like I'm getting at a level where I'm attracting all these really, really great people, to me. But some of the people that I used to hang out with or used to be really close to are now kind of fallen off. I don't have that
Hmm.
connection that I used to with them. And I don't know if I'm not going to say that's a good or a bad thing, but do you see that as well as we grow that the relationships change?
Absolutely. Life is dynamic. And I think it's a natural process. You know, the people that we resonate with when we were at one stage of our life are not necessarily going to have the same resonance with us as we progress. And there's nothing good or bad in it. It's just change.
It
And
just
life is
is.
change.
Yeah, just is what it is. It's hard because I mean I have some pretty good friends that's very difficult for me to be around, and that's that. In some ways, that's painful. I'll be honest. That's hard for me because I want to still lift them up, but yet I don't want them to I guess drag me down. I guess that's just being as real as I can be. Um, but that's for me, that's a difficult paradigm. For me, that's hard. What do you find in that arena? Like, you're the person that's trying to raise your vibration, yet the people that used to be your friends or used to be, I mean, best friends, close, real close, and now all of a sudden you're different and they're still there. So, is there a way to repair that relationship and make that a better thing, or is it just time to move on?
I have found, and especially this is advice that I give to um, the individuals who are involved in co-parenting,
Mm.
is the best thing that you can do is live your life out as an example to others. And they will pick up on that. They will see what you're doing, and your actions are going to speak even louder than what you're saying a lot of times. And they will choose. They will see. They will see where the love is. They will see what you're doing. And if they see the value in that, that's what they're going to be drawn to, you know. But if they're still deciding to stay in their comfort zone, that's their choice because we all have free will. And all we can do is just be the best us that we are.
I totally agree with you there. I mean, it's a self, and I've said this about business, even the business. You say relationships, and I really like that. I hadn't really thought about it before you said that. The relationships are kind of, they bounce off. They're kind of a mirror for who we are. I say business is also a mirror for who we are, and the inside, as our inside grows, our business seems to grow. It seems to be a mirror reflection of ourself as well. But like I said, I hadn't thought of the relationship part, and I appreciate you bringing that up. It's a very interesting point. Um, you keep going into, and I didn't want to cut you off there. If you had things to add, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay. So you talked about the sovereignty of an individual. You brought that up a couple of times. What does that mean for you? I mean, what is the definition of that?
Gosh, to me, it's the fact that you are a whole and complete part of the divinity of the entire universe,
Mm,
because we are all a part of whatever you want to call it, God, creator, source energy, the universe. We are all a part of that. We are more than just this body that we inhabit. That's my belief. And because of that, yes, we are all connected, and then but then at the same token, we are all co-creators of our life.
mm. That's powerful. It's powerful to know that we have the choices in our daily life to create what our future is going to be, what our situation is now. That everything, I mean, I think everything that happens to us is our fault. And that's a good thing, because
Mhm.
then everything that we do going forward is our fault as well, which means if good things happen, then that's our fault, and bad things happen, it's our fault. That's kind of the way I see life. Um, but in relationships, we tend to blame other people. I mean, I don't know. That just seems to be something I see. Is that what you see? And then how do you change them to understand what they did instead of getting the person that's just saying, well, that person did this, 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 and this. You know what I mean?
Blame comes, my understanding of it, blame comes from not wanting to take responsibility for the totality of the situation and the power that you have in your part of it.
Mm,
So that comes from fear, ultimately. Because who wants to, I mean, a lot of people say, yeah, I want to say I'm not powerful. I can create this. But then if you truly admit to that, that you have the power to create this situation, then you also have to take responsibility for it as well.
totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. So what happens when that person just isn't right for you? Is that the case? Or can you make that better by what we're talking about right now? Or is it a situation where you have to leave that toxic person? I mean, that to me is really a difficult fine line, because on one hand we're saying we're creating this, but on the other hand we're saying, we're kind of asking, you know, when is it time to go?
Yes, and that's what really bangs up us up against our standards. What are we willing to tolerate in our lives? What do we really want to hold our life container in? When are our boundaries crossed? When are we going to say that we're not going to allow this anymore? And that's something that is very mutable. You know, what one person may tolerate in their life, another person may say, no, no way, that's intolerable. I'm not taking it. No way. You start this, I'm gone. So it depends. It's a matter of individual choice.
Hmm. How does the dynamic work when we're all creators of our own reality, but yet there's two people? So that means there's two creators of their own reality. How do you take responsibility for just your part? Because there's two people here. It takes two to tango, I guess, is the
Right?
expression. Um, but if somebody's energies aren't aligned with your energy, and they don't really care about working on what they're doing, and they're trying to create a life of, God, how do I put this? They're very negative. They're creating a negative life. If you want to create a positive life, how does that work in a relationship? And how does the ultimate outcome for that family or that dynamic going to be? Because you got one side that's trying to do the positive and trying to bring in positive vibe, positive attitude, and you got the other partner who's negative, you know. So how do we work through it? I'm trying to get the question right here. How, because there's a lot to unpack with that. There really
There
is.
is. There is.
So it, number one, how does that dynamic work, and what actually comes into the relationship? Like, one person's trying to attract really good things, while the other person's really attracting negative things, whether they know it or not. So since the two, as we're taught, the two become one. If the two do actually become one and they're both fighting against each other, what comes from the law of attraction? I mean, if you're talking law of attraction, what comes to that couple? That's the first question. And then what can they do to work through that and change it? Or is it just a situation where you have to leave it?
Well, you have to remember, um, relationship does not develop in a vacuum. Those two people came together for a reason, even if they don't know what that is. And so at some period of their time, they resonated with each other.
Mm. Yeah,
They
that makes
had to,
sense.
or else they wouldn't be in a relationship.
Mm.
So that's when you start to backtrack and say, okay, when did things start to deviate? What happened that started the paths to separate? And it isn't necessarily one particular event. It could be underlying aspects of each person's personality that just started to rub wrong against each other over time.
Mm.
And it's a matter of identifying what it is and understanding that. And that's how you make those decisions.
That's really something. I mean, there's so many questions I have. I really do. I have a ton of them. So it's like, how do you have a long-term relationship when everything is constantly changing? We're constantly evolving at our own different levels and pace. We hear something and a light bulb comes on. We get awakened to something. And then all of a sudden our path is different. You know, how do you stay in a long-term relationship when there's constant chaos and constant change?
Well, you got to ask yourself, where is the fundamental change coming from? And then, is that change drastic enough that it's severely negatively impacting the relationship? Or is this something that you both can mutually come to some sort of negotiation about?
Mm.
When does,
Negotiation is key, and
yes,
communication is another key. I'm just talking about how we try. I think everyone tries to grow and be better. Well, maybe not everyone, but most people do. So if you're striving to be more than you are right now, then naturally you're going to deviate, you're going to change. Okay. And so the other person, if they don't stay at that same rate of change, or they decide they are not ready for that change yet, then you have a dynamic where the two are they're no longer equal or compatible. That's where I was going with that. You know,
sure.
and do you think through negotiation and through those counseling and stuff like that can help those people, or are those people just permanently going on a different path?
It depends, again, on what each person's standards are and
Mm,
what they are willing to maintain and what they're willing to negotiate, what you are deciding to allow to remain in your life.
that's really good. That's really good. So I think that there's so many things that we could talk about when it comes to interpersonal relationships because they're just so complicated. I believe that completely. Um, but like you said, I think the main thing is negotiation and kind of like how much you're willing to take, um, understand the other person. I think that's key. But what else do you want to talk about in the dynamic of what you do?
I want as many people as possible to really know the absolute unconditional love, that energy that they truly are. And I think it's really hard for all of us because we come into this world in a situation where we're being raised by other individuals who have their own set of conditions already. And all they can do is teach us what they know. And
Mm,
it's can be very hard to unlearn these things and remember that love that we are.
yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, my mind went to Yoda, but unlearn what you have learned type thing. That's just me, though.
No, it's true though. It's true, and I'm sure that many of your listeners have experienced that in
Yeah.
various stages of their life.
And that's why it's good to bring this out here to tell to lay out some things that they can do, resources that they can use to help their relationships with people, you know. So I wanted to give you some time to be able to um basically tell us where you're at, what you're doing, if you got programs coming out, that type of a thing. If the floor is going to be yours for that.
Certainly. Well, you can certainly find me on Facebook by my name. I also have a business page, Hope Carroll, Soul Relationship Coach. I have lots of informative videos and posts on both that your listeners are welcome to explore. Um, and I have various containers of things that I do to help my clients to come to the understanding of the power and the love that they truly are. Um, for some of your listeners, if you are at a place where you're really just feeling so broken and so unloved and want to truly release that fear and shatter those illusions and the stories that we tell ourselves about how we're not lovable, how we can't have a relationship again, or how stuck we are. I have a specific um, coaching container. It's a single session, which I call Love Revealed. And I find that it's a very powerful single session for you to really just shatter those illusions and get to know the truth of who you are and stand in that. So that way, you have the power to choose whatever you want in your life, no matter what space you're coming from, no matter how much or how little money you have, no matter what your environmental circumstances are. That once you decide what you want for yourself and who you want to be, then the channels of how that can manifest are going to open up for you because you're going to see the possibility that it can happen. And that's a powerful thing in itself.
Yes, it is. Visualization and believing that we can actually achieve things. One of the biggest limiting beliefs that entrepreneurs have is belief in themselves. And I think that what you offer is, maybe it's relationship based, but I would consider opening that up to people that do what we do, entrepreneurialism, and maybe offer that as a coaching session to people who want to get out of those limiting beliefs and find out how powerful they really are.
It's for anybody, men, women, whomever, who want to truly get in touch with the power of their own self, ultimately. Um,
Mm,
and that's why I call myself a soul relationship coach rather than a breakup coach, even though I deal with a lot of people who that's been their impetus of why they don't feel loved or why they don't feel enough. I don't want to focus on the event. I want them to understand the whole being of who they are.
mm. Wow, that's really good. Very powerful. This has been a wonderful show. Right? It's been one of them that opens people's eyes, and I think I think people could benefit a lot from what you do. And so, like I said, we'll put the links below in the YouTube thing, and I'm also have this is kind of a semi announcement anyway on the show. I have opened an audio podcast of some of the stories that we have on the video podcast. I only have like 3 of them up right now because it's kind of a long task, and I'm not sure how this is going to work out. But that is also going to be available on iTunes and I think Spotify, and I know iHeartRadio in a couple of months. So as I get these stories and these wonderful individuals that have been on the show, then we will go, you'll be able to get those on the go. And that was the point behind it. I had a lot of people say, I like the YouTube thing, but I really can't deal with it, in my car and on the, if I'm driving. So I went ahead and I started making the audio versions of these shows. So I just wanted you to know that was available, and I want you to click the subscribe button and hit the little bell and all those wonderful things I'm supposed to say at the end, and then subscribe to the new audio channel. So I wanted to speak about that real quick. And I also wanted to thank my guests today, Hope. And Hope, did you want to say something or anything to the people out there before we go?
I want you all to know that you are that energy of love and you are loved. If not by the physical people around you in this moment, then definitely by the creator that has made you and co-created with you all that is around you. And I want to thank you so much for allowing me to be a guest here on the show today.
Thank you for being here. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And I will see you next time.